Don't buy this PS5 SSD. How's it going, guys, and welcome to PSReady. This is actually going to be a really fun video, and this is the second time I'm recording the intro for it because my initial plan was I went out and I bought 4 SSDs, and I also bought a regular old 2TB HDD. But while I was recording the video, one of the drives really started performing poorly. So you're gonna find out which drive is the one I think you should definitely go out and buy, and which drive I think is the one you should definitely avoid. The first test is we're going to transfer a game from the internal storage to an SSD, and of course the external drive as well. Then we're going to try downloading a game to see if the drive speed affects the speed of the download of the game. And then finally, we're going to test how long it takes to install a game onto the new SSD from a disk, the game in question being Ghostwire Tokyo. So the first drive I have to look at today is the Samsung 980 Pro. I actually have had this in my PS5 since they sponsored a video on the channel. Mine is 2 TB, which is pretty big. And if you want to get one at that size, it's going to cost you $260. Now this one has 7,000 megabytes per second read and 5,000 megabytes per second write, which puts it right where you want to be with the PS5. The next drive I have to look at is the Corsair MP600 Pro LPX. This one isn't PlayStation branded. It's just PlayStation colored, and it says PlayStation PS5 compatible. So it also has 1 TB of storage, 7,100 megabytes per second read, and 5,800 megabytes per second write, which puts it at a much faster write speed than the Samsung 980 Pro, which is kind of interesting. And because this one is only 1 TB, it's also cheaper at $125. And it's still cheaper than the 1 TB 980 Pro because that's $145. Next up is this crazy looking one. I kind of like the color scheme of black and orange. It's the Seagate Gaming FireCuda 530. It also has 1 TB. And weirdly, right now on Best Buy, this 1 TB version is the same price as the 2 TB version, which is $250 either way. It might be a price error, maybe, or they're just charging $250 for this because of the insanely fast read and write speed. Not sure, but yeah, $250 for this, kind of expensive. Maybe we'll get a faster transfer speed or something like that because of it. And the final extra internal drive is the WD Black SN850. I would say this is the most recognizable drive for the PS5, especially since it's full on PlayStation branded. This one is in my buddy Rich's PS5. So right now we have mine set up with the Samsung 980, and then we're gonna set his up with this drive, and then we have a third PS5 here that we're gonna install the other 2 drives into. Should be pretty fun. Oh, and it's also 1 TB, and because it's officially licensed, you're gonna pay a little bit of a premium. It's $170. And the final drive I have to look at is just a regular old hard drive. It's an HDD, it's 2 TB, it's from Seagate as well, and it's got alloy on it. It's pretty cool. Thankfully, this one's the cheapest at $80, but honestly, that's pretty close to the price of the SSDs, so I don't know where this one really comes in super handy, but we will see. All right, so we're gonna start out with the first test, which is moving a game from the internal storage to the extra SSD. We're starting with the Samsung 980 Pro because it's inside my PS5 already. I have Ghostwire Tokyo already on my internal storage. This game is only 18 gigabytes, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer it to the Samsung drive, and I'm gonna time it here on my phone as it happens. So I'm gonna start the timer and the transfer at the exact same time. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, I stopped it right when the bar filled up, and that transferred in less than 15 seconds. Now I actually had it on that external, I don't really know how to say it. I had it on the extra drive first, and I transferred it to the internal storage to transfer it back on camera. And it took a lot longer to put it on the internal storage. But yeah, 15 seconds to transfer it to the Samsung drive, that's pretty fast. That's a lot faster than I was honestly expecting. So here we are with the SN850. We are going to transfer Ghostwire Tokyo from the internal storage on the PS5 to the M2 SSD, and I'm going to hit OK and start the timer in 3, 2, 1, go. It's going. All right, so this one came in at 15 seconds, just over 15 seconds actually, so that puts it at around the exact same transfer speed from the internal drive to this extra drive as the Samsung 980. So now we have reached the FireCuda 530. This one has a faster write speed than the other drive. I've got my timer up here, and we are going to start transferring from the internal drive to the SSD in 3, 2, 1, go. All right, so I just transferred the game. I stopped the timer, and it's just under 15 seconds. We'll give it the mulligan and call it 15. Every drive so far has transferred from the internal storage to the new drive in 15 seconds. So now we're gonna go ahead and install the last drive in the PS5 without the side plate on it, the Corsair MP600 Pro LPX. the unofficially official branded drive. This one I'm really curious about because of the write speed. It's basically smack dab in the middle. So the first one is 5,000, the second one is 5,300. The third drive we tried was 6,200. This one right in the middle, 5,800. We'll see if that actually makes a difference in installing the game to the internal drive. This one's the cheapest too. So if it's the cheapest and the fastest, that's gonna be a hard one to not recommend to people to buy, but we will see. So right now with the MP600 from Corsair, I would be trying to move Ghostwire Tokyo from the internal storage to this drive, but as you'll see in a couple minutes, we can't actually do that. So now we're moving on to the second test here, which is to see how fast a game downloads to this drive. Obviously, that is very dependent on the internet, but it could also be affected by the speed of the drive. So I'm gonna do the same thing here. I've got Enter the Gungeon because that's a small game and I don't wanna sit here all day. Okay, so 3, 2, 1, download. And you can actually see which drive it's downloading to because right there in the top right corner, it says M.2. I actually set that as the default, so that's where all my games go when I first install them. All right, so Enter the Gungeon is downloaded and installed on my PS5. It's the PS4 version of the game. I don't even know if there's a PS5 version. It took 3 minutes and 26 seconds, kind of slow. And now we're on to the second test with the SN850, which is downloading Enter the Gungeon from the PlayStation Store. This game is 1.5 gigabytes and also included in PS Plus Extra. So I'm gonna hit download and start in 3, 2, 1, go. Obviously this is also dependent on internet, but right out of the gate, this is going a lot faster than the other download was on my PS5. This looks like it's gonna wrap up in less than a minute. Okay, so this came in dramatically faster at 1 minute and 12 seconds. That cut the time in half that it took on the Samsung 980. Obviously, again, internet is a factor, but I don't know if it's that much of a factor on something like this. It's kind of interesting to see how much faster this game downloaded on the SN850. We're gonna have to try out the other two drives to really see though. All right, so now we're on step 2 with the Firecuda 530. We're gonna be downloading Enter the Gungeon from the PlayStation Store. I'm gonna hit go in 3, 2, 1, resume. So the first time around, this took around 3 minutes. The second time, it was just over a minute, I'm pretty sure. And now it's looking like we're gonna have just over a minute again. So this time around, it took 1 minute and 10 seconds to download Enter the Gungeon. So I think we're gonna have to go back after we try the final drive and check the first one again, the Samsung 980 Pro, because that taking over 3 minutes, I'm going to guess that was an internet issue and not a drive issue. But once again, this one is just as fast as the SN850. It's maybe a couple seconds different, and I'm gonna say that, yeah, it's really coming down to internet versus the actual read-write speed of the drive. All right, so now we're on the second step, which is downloading Enter the Gungeon to the MP600, the Corsair drive. This should work. I'm gonna start the download and the timer at the same time in 3, 2, 1, go. So if you remember, the first time it took 3 minutes, the second time it took a minute, and then the third time it took just over a minute. And now this is looking like it's probably gonna take just over a minute as well. All right, so this one was just over a minute. It's the third fastest of the drives. The interesting thing is we can't do the next test because we tried it twice. We tried installing Ghostwire Tokyo off of the disk. We stopped it at around 15 minutes and started over. And right around 15 minutes again, it just slowed down to an absolute crawl and it looked like it was just gonna take over an hour, which is crazy. Now we're moving on to the third test, which is how fast a game will install off the disk. I now realize I should have done this first because I'm going to delete Ghostwire Tokyo and then reinstall it from the disk. Probably would have been smarter to do it first. So this initially scared me because at first it said 2.5 hours, but it is rapidly dropping. It went from like 17 minutes to 13 while I was saying this sentence. So we will see how long it ultimately takes. All right, we're closing in here. 8.5 minutes later. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. A little off there. Okay, good. 8 minutes and 42 seconds. Don't have an opinion yet on whether or not that's fast or slow. It seems kind of slow, but I gotta test the other drives. All right, so now with the SN850, we are on step number 3, which is installing Ghostwire Tokyo from a disk. We're at 8 minutes and 11 seconds here, and there's 20 seconds left. Oh my God. This is actually kind of tense. I think the time to beat was 8:42. I will correct myself in the edit, but I think that was the time to beat. 8:34! So it was faster, which makes a little bit of sense because this drive is faster in the numbers. So this one has a write speed of 5,300 megabytes per second, and the other one, the 980 Pro, I haven't tested all three yet, that has a 5,000 megabyte per second write, and we can see here that made a 10-second difference. That actually gets me excited to test out the Fire CUDA, because that one apparently is 7,000 both read and write. So we'll see how many seconds that actually saves us. All right, so now we're on step 3 with the Fire CUDA 530. We're gonna install Ghostwire Tokyo to the PS5 directly from the disk. All right, so in this PS5, it looks like Ghostwire Tokyo is installing a little faster, I would say, just by like gut check, like gut feeling. I would say this is going a little bit faster. We'll have to wait and see. Before, I'm pretty sure it took 8 minutes and 42 seconds with the first drive, then 8 minutes and 32 seconds with the second drive. And now we'll see how long it takes with this third drive, the Fire CUDA 530. All right, so it just finished at around 7 minutes and 57 seconds. That's basically a minute faster than the 980 Pro, the Samsung drive, and it is about 30 seconds faster than the SN850. Now, the interesting thing about this drive is that on bestbuy.com, it says that it has a 6,000 megabyte write speed. When we put it in the PS5, it said it had a 6,200 megabyte per second write speed, but the box says it has a 7,000 megabyte per second write speed. So we're gonna go with what the PS5 said, and 6,200 versus 5,000 on the other two drives, and it was a little bit faster. But whatever, you know the drill. We're gonna install Ghostwire Tokyo off the disk into this PS5. This is the same PS5 I just used for the Fire CUDA 530. So I'm gonna run over here. This is the longest test so far. We've gone from like 8 minutes and 50 seconds to 8 minutes and 30 seconds to 8 minutes. And now it's looking like this one's actually gonna be pretty fast. We're already a minute in and it's telling us we have 9 left. Does that seem right? I don't know. We'll see when this is done how fast it actually is. All right, so something's weird with this drive. It says on the box, you get 7,100 write speed. Then we put it in the PS5 and it says 6,500. And now installing Ghostwire Tokyo, it started out pretty much how all the other ones did, but I still have the timer going. And we're at 15 minutes and 30 seconds and it has slowed to a crawl. So I'm gonna give this one the benefit of the doubt and say it's something weird with the PS5 or the disk drive or something. And I'm gonna start it over. So I'm gonna delete it. I'm gonna see if it crawls again like it does now before I call this drive a dud and say don't buy it. We tried installing Ghostwire Tokyo off of the disk. We stopped it at around 15 minutes and started over. And right around 15 minutes again, it just slowed down to an absolute crawl and it looked like it was just gonna take over an hour, which is crazy. So the last drive I want to test here is this HDD. This is really bringing me back. I like the way it looks. We got the Aloy art on there. The only test I think I'm going to be able to do with this drive is transferring Enter the Gungeon over to it, and we'll see how fast that goes. All right, moving a 1.5 gigabyte game from an SSD to a USB drive took around 17 seconds. It actually only took 15 seconds on all the other drives to transfer a 19 gigabyte game from the internal storage to that extra drive. So you can see how much faster the SSD inside the PS5 is than even a USB 3 drive, which honestly aren't that old. It's crazy how fast storage has gotten these days. And yeah, like I mentioned, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw these USB 3.0 drives start to go the way of the dinosaur, because if you remember, this thing is not that far off in price from these 1 terabyte SSDs. Now we've done a fairly thorough test of all these drives, and honestly, it's kind of crazy how different they all are. So the biggest disappointing drive here is obviously the Corsair drive, the MP600. Now this is the cheapest drive at $125, and it's crazy to see that by cheaping out on the drive, you are getting false advertising on the write speed with this thing at 7,100 on the box. When we plugged it into the PS5, it said we were only getting 6,500, and on top of that, it crapped out while it was trying to install Ghostwire Tokyo from the disk. 2 times we tried it and it just hung at around 75%. I don't know what the issue is. It could be thermal throttling, it could come down to the drive, but yeah, this thing is not great out of the box. And the fact that we bought this full price at Best Buy this many years into the PS5's life cycle, and this is even a risk, I mean, I don't really want to even give them the benefit of the doubt on this one. I think it's not really worth going for that MP600. We did run into the download issue with the Samsung 980 Pro. That I think was definitely the internet because that drive performed super well. It was basically like the middle of the road across the board. So this one really is middle performance for middle price. The 1 terabyte version is $145, which puts it at a cheaper price point than the SN850, the official PS5 drive. And for that little bit cheaper drive, you're getting a little bit worse performance. I would say that even though the SN850 performed better than the 980 Pro, it's not worth the extra price because you're only getting like relatively faster speeds. Like in the long run, it's only gonna save you seconds, whether it's installing a game from a disk, downloading a game, or transferring from the internal storage to that drive. Like, I don't think it's worth paying the extra money to get those marginal increases. The wild card here is definitely the FireCuda 530 because all across the board, the numbers are completely insane. Like the box says it gets 7,000 both read and write. Then the Best Buy website says it gets 7,300 read and 6,000 write. But when you put it in the PS5, it said that it only gets 6,200 read, which is interesting because the Corsair drive said that it gets 6,500 as the read when we put it in the PS5. So it's not like the PS5 itself is capping it at 6,200 because we've seen with another drive that it can go higher. Now, while I don't like the fact that there's false advertising on both the box and the Best Buy website, this thing performed better than all the other drives we tested, whether it was downloading a game, installing it from the disk, or even transferring from the internal SSD to this drive, even though transferring, it was a little bit faster, like microseconds faster. On the thing that actually mattered, which was installing a game from a disk, it was over a minute faster than the slowest drive, which is crazy. So even though no matter where you check, there is false advertising with this drive, I would still recommend picking this one up at the 1 terabyte option because even though there's a price error on the Best Buy website and it says it's $250 at the time of recording this video, we checked Amazon and it's $140, which that doesn't make it the cheapest because the Corsair drive is $125. I'm just not recommending that across the board because we had an issue with it. So yeah, you're gonna spend around $140 regardless. You might spend a little bit more if you get the SN850, but I think this one's worth going with because not only is it in the same price range as both the SN850 and the Samsung 980, it's also the best of the three by a noticeable margin. Like actually noticeable. You saved an entire minute when transferring Ghostwire Tokyo from the disk to this drive, and that can't be beat with the other one. Of course, we can't trust these numbers as we've seen, but the 2 terabyte version, honestly, with this drive would be the best way to go. I think the best recommendation here, if you have the money, is the FireCuda 530 2 terabyte option at $250 because even though the website is giving really fast speeds, you can't really trust it, but we've seen that this drive is faster in real life conditions. So I think if you have the money, the drive that you should buy is the FireCuda 530 2 terabyte drive. But if you only have $125, I have that drive, and I also have every other one of these drives linked in the description. So if you're gonna take my recommendation on the 2 terabyte FireCuda, or you're gonna get the 1 terabyte SN850, you can get all of these drives down below.